Anything else? Eleven through 14. And so Nick starts us out with makeover reality shows have been popular for some time. Women are given new makeup, hairstyles, and often plastic surgery to look totally different. Rooms or homes are given new paint, furniture, designer styles. Even cars are taken and given a new paint job, wheels, and all the latest gadgets. Does anyone remember any of those shows from your youth or recently? My youth. Extreme Home Makeover. There was a plastic surgery one that I remember Fox had, but I don't remember the name of it to save my life, and I did not look it up today. And I cannot remember what it was called. Something Swan, I think. It was something weird. It was something I was like, that's a lot to deal with all at one time. That one. See, I don't watch the daytime television, so I don't know that one. And then if you don't turn it off, you get the Jerry Springer and the Michael Wilkos and all that comes on later, but I know that much. There's a grossness to that show that kind of can intrigue you, but at the same time, you just like, I don't really need to see any of that whatsoever. So the one common theme in all of those shows is they don't touch what you can't see. Ladies look different, but are the same on the inside. Houses may look nice, but the structure is rarely improved, and cars are left with the worthless engine they had in the first place and mechanical problems, but they have all this new stuff to power on the inside. What was the name of the car show that was on MTV? Because now that's bothering me. Trick My Ride. Pimp My Ride. There we go. Every time in that show bothered me because they would do all of this cool stuff to the inside and outside of the car. Never once did they touch the engine. Never once did they touch the drivetrain, brakes, none of that stuff. They just made it look nice, and then it was going to break down as soon as it rolled off the lot. Hypocrisy is like that car that looks great on the outside, but an engine that has 300,000 miles on it and a serious oil leak. Hypocrisy is the inside and the outside not matching up. Many people live lives where the inside and outside don't match up. Even a godly person like Peter became caught up in hypocrisy until Paul pointed it out. Paul saw hypocrisy in these false teachers and even Peter. Instead of ignoring it, he confronted it, and we can learn from the stand he made. So the truth about the hypocrisy that we're going to see tonight. Peter and Paul are very different in this passage. One stood for the truth, the other got it wrong. Today's scripture will help us find out which we are most like. So the first thing is the source of hypocrisy is fear of others. So before certain men came from James, he used to eat with the Gentiles. But when they arrived, he began to draw back and separate himself from the Gentiles because he was afraid of those who belonged to the circumcision group. Peter had come to the church at Antioch and was enjoying spending time with the Gentile believers. He had realized through several experiences with Jesus that it was okay to eat with the Gentiles, so he was enjoying his new friends. Certain Jewish believers came down from the church at Jerusalem that still thought it was a sin to eat with the Gentiles. And so what does Peter do in verse 12 when they show up? As soon as the people that came from Jerusalem, what does he do? He drew back from himself. Now, as a high school teacher, I get to see this a lot. Whether it's the new kid or somebody said something that they weren't supposed to say, all of a sudden, all these friends they had, they don't have anymore. And it just is what it is. But Peter doing this was directly being hypocritical because of the fear of the opinion of the people that were coming from Jerusalem. Do you think Peter is right for what he did? No, because he learned from the man himself that it's okay to eat with them. Worrying about what others think of you and judging you on that is not going to be the end-all be-all. So anytime we allow people to change how we behave or what we believe, then we are being controlled by fear and others' approval. So the danger of the hypocrisy is its effect on others. The other Jews joined him in his hypocrisy, so that by their hypocrisy, even Barnabas was led astray. It is bad enough that we sometimes find ourselves changing because of the people around us, but the greater danger is whom we might take with us. So who does 13 say also followed Peter in this instance? Barnabas. Why is this such a big deal? Say it again. He was setting a poor example, and he's leading astray one of the stronger believers in that group. He was known as the encourager, and so he pulled back. Christians, they love to talk about how loving, dutiful, and compassionate they are, yet I have yet to meet one who does not practice hypocrisy to the highest degree. It was an unknown atheist quote that Nick gave me in this one. How would you answer the atheist? I mean, ever since I've been here, it's been a very loving, dutiful, and compassionate group. I mean, none of y'all have really ever made me feel outside.
I think religious people are the biggest enemy. I've got a friend who here over the weekend in Pennsylvania, and we've talked some. I even left my book last year. He will not go to church. We said something about coming to church for the Sunday. He didn't want to. And the biggest reason he is opposed to church is his dad. They were religious. They knew the Lord.
And
For that reason, he's turned off totally. I don't know that.
And there are several friends that I have, and most of you probably do too, that have that same reasoning behind it. Is the people of the church that they've been around before have done something that has been either poorly to them or poorly seen by them, and it affects the way that they view the church. And we all have that. Right, it is our job. It is our job to show them that this is not every one case. This is those people that you ran into that time. It's our job from that point forward to show them what it really means and to be that dutiful, loving, compassionate person that a lot of us say we are, and most of us are. Like, there's not a person in here that I can point out that isn't that way in some way, shape, or form. What are some ways that Christians' hypocrisy could affect another Christian? Not a non-believer, but another Christian. So it could kill the respect that that other Christian has for you. How else could it affect one? Could make you question other things they do. Could it make you question your own beliefs sometimes? It's fortunately and unfortunately. Fortunately, my experiences have been good. I wasn't saved until I was, when did I start dating Hannah? 29, 28, 27? I don't remember anymore. Yeah, that memory is just not what it used to be. I was either 27 or 28 when I met Hannah, and I wasn't a believer at that point. And a lot of that was because of my experience that I had with the church when I was younger. I knew of people in the church, how they acted when they were at church, and then I saw how they acted when we were at school or out somewhere else, making teenager bad decisions. It is what it is. And it affected, I was like, well, what's the point? I'm not going to go if they're going to tell me this on Sunday and then turn around on Monday and act like this. And that affected me as a non-believer, and now that I have been saved, it affects me in a way that sometimes I question, like, am I doing the right thing when I see someone of higher status, not status, but of someone who's been a part of the church a lot longer than I have. If they act a certain way, it makes me question, am I doing the right thing? Usually I'm pretty quick to readjust myself on that thought, but at the same time, it can make you question things even about yourself. Yes. No, and everybody's not in the same place at the same time. And that's one of the harder things to understand when it comes to talking to Canon. You have to be very direct with everything you say to him, or he's not going to listen to you, and he's going to go the opposite direction, or he's going to run into traffic. It's kind of what his thing is at this point. But with Christianity, we're not all going to be able to give that direct message at the same time, because none of us are ever in the same place at the same time. We may intersect with each other sometimes, like somebody's on the way farther away, somebody's on the way in, and you may intersect with them, but at the same time, even that's different. But so our message that we have to put forward is that compassion, and you have to be humble with it. Like let me see. I can't remember who it was, but it was somebody who was trying to get to me in college. And they're a good person, they still are. But the way that they came at it was telling me that my life was wrong at the time. And yes, they're right about that. My life at the time was wrong. But when you come at me and you come at me hard and you say every decision you're making is wrong because you don't have this, what am I going to do? I'm done listening to you at that point. And most of us, when somebody confronts us with something, we either take it to heart or we just stop listening, depending on who that person is, what they're telling you. But for the most part, if somebody's attacking every single life choice you've ever made, I'm done listening. That's just me. And by some of the shaking of heads, I can see that some of it is y'all too. But
If you're not trying to grow as a Christian, Billy Graham's devotional yesterday called a casual worldly Christian.
yeah, if you're trying to stay in that same spot, that's a hard one, because sometimes we fall into that category too.
At times we might be, at times we just like Peter was,
Yeah,
saying one thing and doing another.
yeah. So the biblical confrontation. There are times in our lives that we should confront people when they are doing wrong. Are there times? in our lives when we should confront people when they're doing wrong? The bold answer is yes, because the damage one person can do to the family of God, it is essential that believers be willing to confront assaults against the truth, and Paul does that. So he goes to the source first, and that's in 11a. When Cephas came to Antioch, I opposed him to his face. Our tendency is to talk to everyone else about someone's mistakes instead of taking it to the person. Paul knew that if the problem was going to be solved, he had to deal with the source. So, what are 2 reasons that people talk about people rather than directly to them? You're looking for that confirmation bias, first off, is you're going to talk to somebody that's going to say, yeah, that's wrong, they shouldn't do that, blah, 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 blah. But what's the other reason? We're trying to avoid confrontation, because confrontation isn't fun at all. One of the worst parts of my job is when I have a kid failing, having to call the parents, because most of the time those parents don't know that kid's failing until you make that phone call. There have been times I've had, parent conferences 2 years ago. Called a parent, hey, he's a senior, he's got to have this class. I'm trying to help him out, but he's not showing up to any of the tutoring stuff. He's not turning in anything. Well, what do you want me to do about it? And then hung up on me. It's like, well, cool. Yeah, it's like, I'll just move on to my next person. But it's not fun. I hate making those phone calls. It's not the most fun part of my job. It's not something I enjoy doing, but it's confrontation that has to happen. I teach a course that's required to have to graduate from high school. You fail my course, you're either going to take it again, which I'm the only one that teaches it, so you're going to have to take it with me again the next semester or year, or you're going to have to come to summer school to pass it, which, no, I'm not. That's not an option for most, because you got to work, you got to do other things. But we avoid that confrontation sometimes really quickly. What's the motive behind the gossip, though? If you're going to talk to other people about other people more of the time. Yeah, it's usually to build yourself up and feel good about yourself because you see somebody doing something wrong and you get to be the one that calls them out on it. What else? It does take the eyes off of you for things that you might not be doing right as well. The motive for confrontation is different. I like to avoid it. I'm not a confrontational person. I don't like it. If I have to do it, I'll do it. But at the same time, it's not like a yay, let's get to go do this activity. And I don't think anybody in here really likes confrontation, right? Right? I wish it would sometimes, but it doesn't ultimately. So when we're confronting a problem, especially in the family of God, we have to have that confrontation. If I'm doing something wrong, I would much rather somebody point it out to me instead of me hearing about it from somebody else or hearing about through passing somebody and hearing the whispers as I go past. If there's something I'm doing, I would much rather have somebody confront me about it, even though I don't like confrontation. That's easier. With the gossip, does the problem ever get solved with the gossip anyway? No. It makes it bigger, and it potentially changes the story and then makes it worse. Oh yeah, I just finished reading through the New Testament, and me and Nick had done a Bible study on Romans and Revelation. I think that was the other book. And even though I've already read through them and we did a deep study on it, when I read it through the second time, it's a completely different book than the first time I read through it. And the other thing with going to somebody, if you're going to confront them, you have to make sure that you know the truth. And this comes from verses 11b and 14a. Because he stood condemned when I saw that they were not acting in line with the truth of the gospel. When Paul arrived in Antioch and saw the behavior of Peter and the conflict it had caused in the church, he knew Peter knew better. Paul knew what he believed and stood firmly. Have you ever seen someone who stood for something and it was obvious that they did not know why they stood for it? I didn't have an example for this one either. Yeah. Say it again. Fair. Have no idea. No. They don't know what it really represents. What kind of impact can a person like that have on you? Someone that stands for something but has zero idea what they're standing for. You can lose trust in them. Not much. They shouldn't have much of an effect on you anyway, especially if they don't understand what they're standing for. Let's see, is this the last part? Yes. The last part of this is when you are confronting someone about something, go to the source, make sure you know the truth about the situation, make sure you're not hearing the gossip side of it, make sure you've seen it, you know 100% that this is happening, and if you need to, involve others. So this comes from 14b. I said to Cephas in front of them all, you are a Jew, yet you live like a Gentile and not like a Jew. How is it then that you force Gentiles to follow Jewish customs? It takes wisdom to know when others need to be involved and when it doesn't help anything. Paul knew that he needed to know. So what two audiences are addressed when Paul's making this confrontation here? The Jews and the Gentiles. Why do you think Paul confronted Peter in front of others? Why do you think Paul confronted Peter in front of others? To make sure that the truth was brought out. These are two of like the big wigs in early Christianity. Like they have a following there, people that listen to them. If they're confronting, or if one's confronting the other about something, if it's in private, does the message really get sent across? Possibly not. It possibly never gets heard again. But because it's in front of people, Peter has to look at what he's done and then either make his actions of why he's doing it known or atone for the action he committed. So when you do it when it's in front of people, you're on the spot right then. Now, it's not recommended that you bring someone up to the altar and do that every Sunday. That's not going to work out well. That's probably going to lead to more gossip. But at the same time, because of their status in the community that they were in, they had to. So our concern in confrontation should be that the truth is made known. And so I'm going to flip over to Acts 15, 5 through 11, and this kind of finishes up the story. Then some of the believers who belonged to the party of the Pharisees stood up and said, the Gentiles must be circumcised and required to meet the law of Moses. The apostles and elders met to consider this question. After much discussion, Peter got up and addressed them. Brothers, you know that some time ago God made a choice among you that the Gentiles might hear from my lips the message of the gospel and believe. God, who knows the heart, showed that he accepted them by giving the Holy Spirit to them, just as he did to us. He did not discriminate between us and them, for he purified their hearts by faith. Now then, why do you try to test God by putting on the necks of Gentiles a yoke that neither we nor our ancestors have been able to bear? No, we believe it is through the grace of our Lord Jesus that we are saved, just as they are. How does Peter's position change in this when he stands up and says that in Acts? What's he doing now? He's agreeing that we're all the same. They're no different from us. It's the grace of Jesus that gives us what we have. It's not the laws of Moses. It's not all of these other things. It's not these hoops that they have to jump through. We're the same. Jesus, not the law. Yep. And so that's what we have for tonight. Paul confronting Peter about it. Are there any questions? And I'm hesitant to ask that. Right. I mean, it's a good thought. I mean, if you put your faith in people's reactions, you're putting your faith in people. You're not putting your faith in Jesus. And that's hard to comprehend, especially when you're younger or when you're first saved, because you look at all these people around you and you're like, okay, this is what I got to do. But that changes all the time, and their situation is going to be different than yours every single time. And so that hit the nail on the head. Anything else? Mm-hmm. And that was a hard pill to swallow when I first got up here, because how many of you have seen me on a sideline at all, ever? Seen me on a sideline coaching. I'm a bit of a hothead. I've maybe broken 5 or 6 headsets in my career. But when you start, and then a couple years after, we still have Josh, who's staying with us, and they started a Bible study, and I started going with them and just being the teacher that had to be in the room. And then you really start to examine yourself and your actions, especially when you have that many people looking at you, whether it's at practice or on the field on Friday night. And I won't say I don't coach anymore, and that tells you where my priorities are right now, but it made me change how my reactions came out. Maybe not as ball of fire as they were, maybe more, that was bad. We got to fix this. Move on or stay away from me for like 5 minutes. But it really makes you think about your own actions, especially when you're in that position. And all of us are at some point in time, whether you're a teacher, a coach, or in your workplace. People are always looking at you, especially if they know you're a Christian. And we have to be able to set that example regardless of the situation. No matter what you're going through every day, no matter what's going on at home or at work, we have to set that line for us. And it's not always an easy conversation to have with yourself. Sometimes it's your wife going home and saying you need to calm down on the sideline because you're about as red as the other team's shirts when you start yelling at people. So, but ultimately at the end of the day, we have to watch what we do because it can affect others around us. And if we see that, talking about it behind somebody's back is never the answer. It's either going to make the problem worse or just continue the problem to go. Confront the person, know the truth. If you need to, involve other people. And that's taking the message home. 7:30.